There are many different ways of getting a micro to talk to you.
Some machines, like this RML Nimbus, can even talk in your voice.
This Nimbus works like a digital sound recorder. Earlier today I used a microphone to record that sentence, and the Nimbus stored away some 8,000 samples for each second of speech. To speak, it just reads those samples back. Well, that's all very well, but what can it do that a £20 cassette recorder can't? Well, of course, a computer can decide what to say and when under the control of a program. For instance, this is a machine you might find in schools. Just imagine the potential for software that can do this kind of thing in the teacher's own voice.
Well done, Katie. You've scored 9 out of 10.
Excellent quality, but 30 seconds of speech would use up about 128 kilobytes of memory. That's the equivalent of about 50 pages of Type Day 4, and it's far more memory than the average home or school micro can offer. So how can you get intelligible speech using less memory? Well, it can be done, but you'll lose some of those human qualities. To begin with, you'll need one of these. It's a miniature synthesizer. It can make all kinds of sounds, but it was particularly designed to simulate the human voice. And you'll also need another chip to tell it what sounds to make. This one is a ROM, a read-only memory. And the data in here instructs this chip to make complete English words. You'll find a pair of chips like this inside the familiar Speak and Spell, which is an educational toy.
Spell green.
Obviously, it helps children with their spelling. But with different data in the ROM, you can get your BBC Micro to talk in Kenneth Kendall's cultured tones.
28. 30.
Well, here's a program which is reading the temperature of the studio, and as you can hear, it's pretty hot in here. It's speaking it out. Well, that could be useful if you were running a scientific experiment and needed to keep your eyes on other things. Well, yes, thank you, Kenneth, that's great. With both the Speak and Spell and the Kenneth Kendall ROMs, the data is stored as complete words. So the only words they can speak are the ones they come with. In this case, it's about 100. Fine for some uses, but for general applications, that could be a problem. Have you ever tried a conversation with just a 100-word vocabulary? Well, it can cramp your style. For more words, you'd need more chips. So for a full vocabulary, the problems and the expense would be horrendous. The answer seems to lie not in whole words, but word parts. That is, component sounds of speech, which when strung together correctly can be used to construct any English word. Things like sh, f, a, I, k, that sort of thing. These sounds are called phonemes, or in some situations, allophones, and reasonable English can be built from just about 40 or 50 of them. By storing that small number of phonemes in a ROM, any English word can be pronounced by stringing together the correct sequence. And that's the approach that Computer Concepts have taken with their new software for the BBC Micro, which costs about £33. To code in words, you have to think about how they sound, not how they're spelt. For example, here's part of a sentence that I'm working on at the moment. This is not as easy as it. Well, notice that is has been coded as IZ. You see, otherwise the micro would say is. Well, I need the word sounds to complete that phrase, and the first phoneme is easy, that's just S. But the next sound is a bit of a problem. Ow. You see, there isn't a letter on the keyboard for ow, so, as ever, if all else fails, reach for the handbook. Well, here we are, and it's got a list of vowel sounds here with different words they might appear in. For example, here's E and O down here. Ah, yes, there we are. Clown, that's the ow sound, that's the one I want, and that's coded as AW. Fair enough. AW. That's sow, now N, obviously. And I think I can probably manage without that D, because we don't say sounds, we say sounds. So, Z to finish it off, and how's that?
This is not as easy as it sounds.
Oh, that's not too bad, quite recognisable. Just a bit flat, something like a tame Dalek. Well, no problem. This system even allows some kind of emphasis. Let's punch that word sounds. That needs an asterisk in the right place.
This is not as easy as it sounds.
And notice how the inflection of all those other words is tailored to build up to sounds.
This is not as easy as it sounds.
That's pretty convincing. The main problem is I had to translate each of those words into the phoneme equivalent, and that takes a long time and a bit of experimentation. Of course, it would be great if the machine could speak from standard text, and you could get your computer to read your electronic mail to you over the telephone. But that's a tall order, or to coin a phrase, it's not as easy as it sounds. Text-to-speech needs a system which understands the grammar, the sense, and the context of words. Well, they haven't quite got there yet, but some systems are pretty close. Here are just a few add-on units. They each have software which applies simple language rules to the words to guess the pronunciation. And this sentence is an acid test. Power mowers are thoroughly tough, though. Although those words look similar, we know that they're pronounced differently. But what do the computers make of it? First of all, this system here. Well, I'm not too sure about that word thoroughly, but the rest of it was all right. This is a standard Commodore 64 with an add-on unit at the back from Curragh. It's the Curragh Speech 64, and there it is. And it only costs about 30 quid, so really, I think at that price it's a thoroughly good buy. Over here we've got a BBC Micro with yet another add-on. This is the Namal Type and Talk, and that sounds like this.
Power mowers are thoroughly tough.
Oh, well, it made some kind of sense of thoroughly, a little bit mechanical, I think. But that's £171, and that unit is compatible with most home micros. Over here, there's a much more expensive piece of hardware. It's the ICL Professional unit, costing about £1,000, and that sounds like this.
Power mowers are thoroughly tough.
Oh, not bad at all. That sounds very confident, anyway. And finally, those were all add-on units, but over here there's the machine that set the industry buzzing. Everybody is saying that the Commodore Amiga is the machine of the future, and it's interesting that they've provided text-to-speech as standard.
Power mowers are thoroughly tough, though.
Pretty good. That costs about, well, $1,200 US, but of course over here you're going to have to wait. Well, that test was none too serious, but to see how valuable this can be in practice, we've been to see one person who's using the speech system as part of his everyday life. You may remember him from one of our earlier series.
Richard Gomm is severely disabled. His only means of communication is by the pointer attached to his head. He uses this to spell out letters. Over the past few years, the keyboard of his computer has been his lifeline. He's even used it to produce 80,000 words for a thesis for a doctorate in philosophy. A monumental typing task, even for someone able-bodied. His latest link with the world is a Namal speech synthesizer, which now means that, to a limited extent, he can use the phone. A Tandata auto-dial modem linked to a BBC Micro gets him connected. For this call, he's already prepared some phrases in advance.
Broadhaven.
472, hello?
Is that a Piper residence?
Yes, hello Richard, how are you?
I am well. How are you?
Oh, I'm quite well, thank you.
Have I got a problem for you?
Oh, tell me about it.
He types the words on the Apple Micro, and the synthesizer's software then works out the pronunciation using 400 speech rules and speaks down the line for him.
Every time I access my floppy, it crashes.
Well, I think I'll have to come over and have a look at it.
Sometime this week. Have you got a day free?
Typing other words letter by letter is very slow and might make people ring off in frustration. So he speeds things up by using some word anticipation software that he's written himself.
Friday.
Oh no, Friday's up. Have you got another day?
It makes a guess at what he means from just a few letters.
Thursday.
Yeah, that's
And he
fine.
uses single characters or codes for commonly used words.
Thank you. Goodbye.
John Piper is Richard's friend and technical advisor. How does he see the system developing?
He can now use the telephone and speak to anyone. But you still have the problem of the rate at which he can make his messages. One of the answers that we're looking at, or one of the possibilities, is the use of an extended keyboard such as this, that gives him very quick access to a very much larger range of utterances that are possible with the conventional QWERTY keyboard.
Well, to prove that it can even work on live television, we've got Richard on the end of this phone. Hello, Richard. Well, you've described your system on our program notes, but can people contact you to buy the software?
Yes, if they contact me to my drive.
Well, that wasn't bad. The line isn't quite as good as it was in the film. I think you said yes if they contact me through Micro Live. Well, what machines does the software work on? BBC and Apple II. Thank you very much, Richard. Goodbye.